My wife slept with her boss, and then I found out she's been secretly claiming my inheritance, over $300, $0 in her name while we were still married. Now she's trying to toss me out and fight for everything, including the family house worth $450K. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife turned out to be the biggest liar and cheat I've ever met. The weird part, it all started with something so small, I almost didn't notice. But looking back, every little sign was there, just hiding in plain sight. And I had been married for about 8 years. We met in college, seemed like a perfect match. She was beautiful, smart, ambitious, and I thought I was pretty lucky. We built a decent life together, or so I thought. She worked in marketing, I ran a small construction business. We had a nice house, a couple of cars, and a pretty good savings account. Things weren't perfect, but I figured that's normal, right? Everyone has their ups and downs. At first, it was small stuff. She'd be late coming home from work more often, say she was stuck in meetings or dinners. I didn't think much of it. Women in her position often had to network, socialize, and pretend to be interested in all that corporate BS. She'd brush off my questions, laugh it off, tell me I was paranoid. But I started noticing small things. Her phone would be in her purse, face down, whenever I looked. She'd get weirdly defensive if I tried to peek at it, calling me insecure or crazy. Then, one day, I came home early from a job site because I wasn't feeling well. I expected to find in the kitchen, maybe cooking dinner or relaxing. Instead, I caught her red-handed, literally. She was in our bedroom on her phone and her face was flushed. She quickly shoved the phone under the pillow when I walked in. My stomach sank. She acted innocent, said she was just texting her sister about some family thing, but I saw the messages. It wasn't her sister. It was some guy named Jake, and they'd been texting late at night for weeks. That was the first real sign. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I told her I saw the messages, and she just shrugged, rolled her eyes, and said I was overthinking it. Jake's just a friend, she said. It's nothing serious. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but I knew better, something was off. Over the next few weeks, her behavior got worse. She started avoiding me, making excuses to leave the house more often. Her phone was glued to her hand, and I'd catch her deleting messages or locking her screen when I walked by. I started snooping because I couldn't shake this feeling that I was being played. I checked her emails, her social media, even her bank accounts. That's when I found it more than just the affair. Turns out, had been secretly claiming my inheritance, over $300, $0 in her name while we were still married. That one hit me harder than the cheating. I'd been working my ass off for years, building that business, saving for our future, and she was quietly siphoning off money into her own account. I found a document from a lawyer, a court order, where she'd filed to get control of my inheritance, claiming it was hers. She'd been doing it behind my back, while pretending to be the perfect wife. I couldn't believe it. The woman I loved was betraying me on every level, emotionally, financially, and now legally. That's when the floodgates opened. I started piecing everything together, the late nights, the secret texts, the money, her evasiveness. It all pointed to one thing: she was screwing her boss, Mark, and had been for months. Mark was a douchebag in his early 40s, always cocky, always trying to act like he was the king of the world. The kind of guy who'd sleep with his employee just because he could. And she was the perfect target, beautiful, ambitious, and apparently a good liar. I felt numb, honestly. It was like my entire world was crashing down in slow motion. I couldn't believe I'd been blind for so long, trusting her, building a life together, only to find out she'd been secretly betraying me and stealing from me all along. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what I'd learned. I was furious, betrayed, hurt, and honestly a little embarrassed. How could I have missed all of this? How did I not see it coming? That was just the beginning. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I needed a plan. Was manipulative, and I wasn't about to let her walk away with everything she wanted: my money, my house, my dignity. I started gathering evidence, talking to a lawyer, and figuring out my next move. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not without a fight. The day I confronted was a whirlwind of anger and disbelief. I had everything laid out: screenshots of her texts with Mark, bank statements showing the transfer of the inheritance into her account, the court documents claiming my property. I wasn't planning to yell or scream. I just wanted her to face what she'd done. But I knew that wouldn't be easy. The type to lie her way out of anything. I called her that morning, told her I needed to talk. She sounded nervous, which was strange because she usually played the innocent victim. When she showed up at the house, she was dressed in her usual designer clothes, makeup perfect, but I could see the nervous flicker in her eyes. I didn't hold back. I laid everything out on the table, her affair, the money, the lies. Her face twisted into a smirk like she thought she could talk her way out of it. "Oh, come on," she scoffed, crossing her arms. "You really think I'd do all that? You're just paranoid. You always jump to conclusions. Mark's just a friend and the inheritance, that's a bunch of nonsense. I'm not claiming anything, you're just imagining things." I stared at her, trying to keep my cool. "You've been caught, I know everything. The texts, the bank transfers, the court papers. How could you do this? How could you cheat on me, lie about money, and then try to screw me over legally?" She rolled her eyes. "Look, I was just trying to get ahead. You're not exactly a millionaire, and I deserve more. I've been working my ass off, and I thought I'd get a little security. You're not the only one who's been working hard here." That's when I lost it. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the stomach. "You think this is about security? You've been sleeping with your boss, Mark, haven't you? While I was out working, you were screwing him, claiming my inheritance and trying to take my house. Do you even hear yourself? You're a liar, a manipulative, selfish liar." She looked stunned for a second, then her bitchy side came out. "Oh, please, you're just jealous because Mark actually pays attention to me. Maybe if you weren't so busy with your stupid business, you'd see what's happening right in front of your face. I don't need your inheritance. I've got a new life with Mark, and you're just in the way." I couldn't believe her audacity. The woman I'd trusted for years was justifying her betrayal like it was some kind of victory. I felt a mixture of rage and deep sadness. How did I get here? How did the woman I loved turn into this lying, scheming person? I told her she needed to leave. I wanted her out of my house, out of my life. But she just laughed, told me she'd fight me over everything. My house, my money, everything I owned. She was confident, arrogant even, thinking she could take all of it because she believed she had the legal right. She kept insisting she was entitled to my inheritance because I never it was for me alone. And she claimed she'd fight me in court if I tried to stop her. That was the moment I realized I was dealing with someone who had no boundaries, no conscience. She was willing to destroy everything I'd built, just for her own greed and selfishness. I felt like I was waking up from a nightmare. I wanted to scream, to shout, but I kept my voice steady. I told her she had to leave, that I was calling my lawyer, and that I was filing for divorce. She just sneered and said she'd see me in court, that she'd take everything I had if she had to. After she left, I sat in the living room trying to catch my breath. My mind was racing. I couldn't believe I married someone capable of this level of deception. I was angry, yes, but also heartbroken. I kept thinking about the good times, the promises we made, the future I'd envisioned. All gone, just like that. Over the next few days, I felt like I was living in a fog. I kept replaying everything, trying to understand how I missed all the signs, how I let her get away with so much. I knew I had to protect myself, my money, and my house. I contacted a lawyer immediately. I wanted to know my options, what I could do to stop her from stealing my inheritance or claiming my property. I also started digging into her financials, trying to find out if she'd hidden more money or assets. The lawyer told me I had a solid case. The court would see her as a manipulative spouse trying to cheat her way into my assets. I was relieved but also exhausted. I'd been betrayed on every front, and now I had to fight to keep what was legally mine. She was trying to turn everything into a war, claiming she had rights to the house because we'd been married so long, even though I knew she was only doing it to punish me and to get her hands on my inheritance. I felt betrayed, angry, and a little lost. This wasn't how I envisioned my life going. I thought I'd be with forever, building a future. Instead, I was staring down the barrel of a legal battle with the woman I thought I knew. I knew I had to stay strong, to fight for what was mine, and to make sure she didn't walk away with everything. But deep down, I also felt a terrible sense of loss of trust, of love, of the life I thought we had. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I threw myself into gathering evidence, talking to lawyers, and trying to piece together what exactly had been up to behind my back. Every time I thought I had a handle on the situation, some new piece of information would come crashing down on me. It was like I was living in some twisted chess game, only I was the pawn, and she was moving her pieces with ruthless precision. One morning, I decided to do a little digging into her bank accounts, something I should have done a long time ago. I pulled up her online banking, and what I saw made my stomach turn. There were multiple transfers over the past 6 months, large sums going into accounts I didn't recognize, all under her name. I traced them back to a private lawyer she'd hired, supposedly to manage her inheritance. But I knew better. She was funneling money into secret accounts, probably to hide her assets from me and the courts. The worst part, I found out that she'd been claiming expenses and deductions on her taxes, trying to justify the money as legitimate income. I've been working my ass off to pay for our house, our lifestyle, and she was secretly siphoning off my inheritance while pretending to be the perfect wife. I felt sick. Everything I had worked for was being drained away, and she was just laughing in the background, thinking she had everything under control. I also found out that she'd been secretly buying property, more than one condo, actually under her name. She told me she was just investing in some stocks and savings accounts, but now I knew she was trying to set up a backup plan. Just in case she lost the legal fight, she'd already started building her own little empire. That was the moment I realized she was serious about taking everything: my house, my money, my future, and I realized I needed to move fast if I wanted to stop her. I met with my lawyer that same afternoon. We went over everything: evidence, her financials, her plans to fight me in court. The lawyer was confident I had a strong case, especially with the proof of her illegal claims and the hidden assets. But he warned me it was going to be a long, nasty legal battle. Was cunning, and she had her own team of lawyers already working on her side. Still, I felt a flicker of hope. I wasn't going to let her walk away with my money or my house, not without a fight. That night, I sat alone in my house, feeling more betrayed than ever. I couldn't sleep. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, replaying everything: the late nights, her lies, the affair, the money. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see that the woman I loved was secretly plotting against me. It was a crushing realization. I'd been naive, blinded by love and trust, and now I was paying the price. I decided I had to do something drastic. I couldn't just sit back and let her take everything. So I contacted a private investigator. I needed to know if she was hiding more assets, if she had other lovers, or if she was planning to run. I told the PI to dig into her financials, her contacts, her whereabouts. I needed to know what she was up to because I didn't trust her anymore. Within a few days, the PI came back with some shocking news. Had been meeting with a real estate agent looking at properties, more condos, more investments, and she'd made arrangements to move out of the house within the next week. She was planning to leave in a hurry, probably trying to hide her tracks. That's when I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her do this. I had to get a court order to freeze her accounts, stop her from selling or transferring any property, and secure my assets. I filed for an emergency injunction, and luckily, the judge agreed. So accounts were frozen, and she was ordered to stay away from the house and any of my assets. For the first time in weeks, I felt a little relief. But I also knew the worst was yet to come. Was furious, and I could tell she was planning something. She was a master manipulator, and I had to stay one step ahead. All of this chaos made me realize how much I'd trusted her, how much I'd given her, and now I was left picking up the pieces. The house, the inheritance, my sense of stability, all under threat. But I wasn't about to let her win, not without a fight. I was determined to hold onto what was mine, to stand my ground, and to figure out how to move forward from this betrayal. It was clear she wasn't going to go quietly, but I was ready for whatever she threw at me. I knew I had to stay sharp, stay focused, and keep fighting for my life, my money, and my dignity. The legal battle was just beginning, and I knew wasn't going to go down without a fight. The court filings started pouring in, her lawyers claiming she had every right to the house, the inheritance, and even accusing me of neglect and emotional abuse to sway the judge. His tone was bitter, full of lies and half-truths, trying to paint me as the bad guy while she played the victim. Honestly, I expected nothing less from her. She's always been good at spinning stories, twisting facts, and manipulating people. Meanwhile, I was trying to keep my head clear. I hired a top lawyer who specialized in family law and asset protection. We worked day and night, compiling all the evidence, bank statements, messages, court documents, witness statements. I even hired a financial expert to verify the amount of inheritance she tried to claim and to track her hidden assets. It was exhausting, but I knew I had to be meticulous. If she managed to hide or transfer assets before the court could freeze them, she'd walk away with everything. One of the most shocking revelations came from the Pye's reports. Had been secretly meeting with a real estate agent about a condo downtown, an apartment I didn't even know she was looking at. She'd been planning her escape, trying to get a foothold somewhere else, probably to start fresh with her new life with Mark or whoever she was secretly seeing. She'd also opened a new bank account under her maiden name, trying to keep her transactions hidden from me. The depth of her deception made me sick. I remember the moment I sat across from my lawyer, feeling like I was in some bad movie. He looked at the evidence, then at me, and said, "You've got a strong case, but smart. She's probably already trying to move assets, hide money, or even prepare to flee if things get worse. We need to act fast." That's when I decided to file for a court order to appoint a temporary receiver for the house and the assets. I didn't want her getting away with any of it before the final hearing. The court granted the order, and suddenly everything changed. Was furious. She called me a controlling bastard, claiming I was trying to ruin her, that I was jealous and paranoid. She insisted she had every right to claim her share because we'd been married so long. But I knew better. I knew she was just trying to justify her greed, her affair, and her theft. I also knew she was planning to fight me tooth and nail, so I prepared myself for a long, bitter fight. In the meantime, I started talking to friends and family, trying to get advice and support. I never thought I'd need this much help, but I was in over my head. My trust was shattered, and I felt like I was losing control of everything I'd worked for. I kept asking myself how I'd let it get this far, how I'd been so blind to her lies and schemes. Every day was of emotions, anger, sadness, frustration, and a desperate hope that I could somehow come out of this with what was rightfully mine. One night, I sat alone in my house, staring at the empty walls, trying to process it all. I realized that I'd been planning this for months, maybe even longer. The way she avoided me, the secret meetings, the hidden accounts, they all pointed to a calculated effort to take everything I had, and I was just a fool for not seeing it sooner. I felt betrayed on a level I never thought possible, like I'd been played by someone I loved and trusted. It was a gut punch. But amidst all this chaos, I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't just sit around and wait for her to take everything. I had to be proactive. I started documenting everything, every conversation, every transaction, every lie. I wanted to make sure I had airtight evidence for the court. I also reached out to a forensic accountant to dig even deeper. If she'd hidden more money or assets, I wanted to find them. The most troubling thing I uncovered was her plan to move out of the house. She'd already arranged movers. She was planning to leave within a week, probably to try to hide her new assets and start fresh. That's when I realized I had to act fast again. I filed a motion for an emergency restraining order to prevent her from selling or transferring any property. I also demanded that she be held in contempt if she tried to do so. The judge granted it, and suddenly I had some peace of mind. But I knew this was just the beginning, was not going to accept losing easily. She was already spinning her web of lies, trying to paint herself as the victim. I could tell she was trying to manipulate everyone, her family, her friends, even the court. I had to stay sharp, keep my evidence tight, and prepare for the inevitable court showdown. I wasn't about to let her walk away with everything, especially not the house I paid for or my inheritance. As I sat in my quiet house that night, I realized how much I'd been betrayed, not just by, but by my own trust. I'd believed in our marriage, in her words, in her promises. And now I saw that it was all a lie. The pain was sharp, but underneath it all I knew I had to stand tall. I had to fight for what was mine, no matter how dirty it got. I promised myself I'd come out of this stronger, even if it meant tearing everything down first. The court hearings came fast and furious after that. Was furious too. She showed up with her lawyers, dressed to impress, her face tight with anger. She kept insisting she was entitled to half the house, half my inheritance, and even some kind of joint rights to the properties she'd secretly bought. Her whole tone was aggressive, like she thought she could bully her way through the legal system. I knew better. I had my evidence, my lawyer, and a clear plan. On the stand, I laid out everything. How she'd been secretly claiming my inheritance, hiding assets, and planning her escape. I presented the court with the bank statements, the court orders, the messages, everything I had. I could see her trying to spin her lies, but the judge wasn't buying it. My lawyer hammered her with questions, exposing her manipulations, her lies about the inheritance, her secret meetings with the real estate agent. Meanwhile, lawyers tried to argue that she deserved a fair share, that we'd been married long enough, that she'd contributed to the household. But the judge saw right through it. He asked pointed questions about her financial deception, her attempts to transfer assets, and her plans to move out. I could tell he was starting to see her for what she was, a woman willing to cheat, lie, and manipulate to get what she wanted. The most intense moment came when I was cross-examined. I was steady, calm, but inside I was boiling. I told the court how she'd been secretly claiming my inheritance, how she'd been lying about her financial situation, and how she'd been planning her escape all along. I explained how I'd been betrayed and drained emotionally and financially. I made it clear I wanted to keep my house, my inheritance, and to prevent her from transferring or selling any assets. By the end of the hearing, the judge issued a temporary order. So accounts were to remain frozen. She was barred from selling or transferring property, and she had to stay away from the house. The court also scheduled a full hearing to decide on the final division of assets, including the house and the inheritance. I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders, but I knew this was far from over. On her part was furious. She spat at me outside the courtroom, calling me a controlling asshole and jealous bastard. She kept insisting she was entitled to her fair share, and that I was trying to ruin her, but I didn't care. I knew the truth, and I had the evidence to back it up. I also knew that at the end of the day, the court would see her for what she was, a manipulative woman willing to lie, cheat, and steal to get her way. That night I sat alone in my house, exhausted but relieved. The legal fight was just beginning, but I'd made a stand. I'd protected what was mine for now. I kept thinking about how this all started with a little suspicion, and how it spiraled into a full-blown war. It made me realize how fragile trust really is. I trusted with my heart, my money, my future, and she betrayed me on every level. But I also knew I couldn't change what happened. All I could do was stay strong and fight for what I deserved. I'd learned a hard lesson about the lies people tell, the secrets they hide, and how sometimes the person you love the most can turn out to be your worst enemy. I promised myself that no matter what, I'd come out of this with my dignity intact. I'd rebuild piece by piece and make sure she didn't get away with destroying everything I worked so hard for. Now I just had to wait for the final hearing. The court would decide who gets what, and I was determined to make sure the judge saw through her lies and manipulations. I had the evidence. I had the truth. And I wasn't about to let her take my house, my inheritance, or my future without a fight. The final hearing was a brutal 2-day ordeal. Lawyers pulled out all the stops, more lies, half-truths, and fake tears than I could count. She sat there, trying to look innocent, but I knew better. I sat across from her, feeling like I was in some courtroom drama I never wanted to be part of. I had my evidence laid out, my witnesses ready, and my lawyer fighting tooth and nail. When it was my turn to speak, I told the court everything. The secret accounts, the inheritance claims, her plans to move out, and her affair with Mark. I made it clear I wanted full control of the house, to keep my inheritance, and to prevent her from selling or hiding any assets. I emphasized how she had lied, cheated, and manipulated her way into what she wanted, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. Tried to argue that she deserved a fair share because she'd been married long enough and had contributed to the household. She even claimed I was a neglectful husband who didn't care about her. I just shook my head. I told the court that her contributions were built on lies and theft, how she'd hidden assets, claimed my inheritance, and planned her escape. I explained how she'd been planning this for months, and how her attempt to manipulate the court was just more of her lies. The judge listened carefully, asking pointed questions. He looked at the evidence, then at me. When he finally spoke, his voice was firm. He ruled in my favor on most counts. The court ordered that the house be awarded to me outright, that claims to the inheritance be dismissed, and that any assets she tried to hide or transfer be permanently frozen. She was ordered to pay my legal fees, and she was barred from selling or transferring any property or assets until the final division. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It wasn't a perfect victory, was still fighting, still bitter, but I knew I had done everything I could to protect myself. The court's decision was clear. She was not entitled to my house or my inheritance, and I was going to keep what was legally mine. His face twisted in anger and frustration. She screamed at the judge, calling him biased, claiming she'd be back with more evidence, but it was all just noise. She stormed out of the courtroom, her high heels clicking furiously on the marble floors. I stayed behind, exhausted but relieved, knowing I'd finally won. Some measure of justice. In the weeks that followed, I moved forward. I filed for divorce, and it was finalized a few months later. Moved out trying to fight for custody of our house, but the court saw through her manipulations. She lost her claim to the property and was ordered to return the money she'd stolen from my inheritance. She tried to appeal, but her lies had been exposed, and her desperation was obvious. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown through this nightmare. I learned to trust my instincts, to protect what's mine, and to never let someone manipulate me again. I've also come to understand that some people are just inherently selfish, and no amount of love or trust can fix their greed and lies. Now I'm rebuilding my life. I've sold the house, moved into a smaller place, and started over. I still think about sometimes, about how I loved her, how she betrayed me, and how I almost lost everything. But I also know I'm stronger now. I've learned that sometimes the only way to win is to fight back hard, use the truth as your weapon, and never let anyone take more than they're entitled to. So, if there's one thing I can say to anyone reading this, trust your gut, keep your evidence, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Because in the end, the truth will come out and justice will find a way.